Your bedroom is for your brother's kid, Mom stated, holding small curtains by my window. At 26, I was contributing $2,000 every month just to help out. Where am I meant to sleep? I inquired. Dad shrugged, saying, Get your own roof. This room belongs to the baby. I packed my car and immediately left that night. The next morning, the electrician appeared, asking, Who's paying for this $9,300 Rewire your son authorized? You know that feeling when your family utterly betrays you? Well, I lived it. And when they finally pushed me too far, I made sure they paid a price they never ever saw coming. My name is Anthony. I'm 26 years old, and I'm an automation engineer. My job pays me well enough to live comfortably, to have my own place. But for the last 3 years, I hadn't. Instead, I lived in my childhood bedroom. And get this, I paid my parents $2,000 every single month. They called it helping out. I called it rent, even though they absolutely refused to use that word. For 3 years, this unspoken arrangement just worked. Every month, on the first, I'd transfer the money. They'd smile, say thank you, and nothing would really change. My room stayed exactly the same as when I turned 18. The blue walls, the scratched dresser, the narrow bed pushed against the window overlooking the backyard where I used to play. My older brother, Jonathan, lived just 4 blocks away with his wife, Nancy. And everyone, absolutely everyone in our family, orbited around one fact. They had a baby on the way. Mom spent every weekend buying tiny clothes. Dad cleared out the garage to build a crib by hand. Every dinner conversation was about nursery colors, baby names, and how excited everyone was for the first grandchild. I just sat there, quiet, chewing my food, while they planned a future that felt a million miles away from mine. No one ever asked about my projects at work. No one asked if I needed anything. I was just the dependable one. The one who paid on time. The one who never caused trouble. The one who existed in the background, like a piece of furniture. Nobody really noticed me until I was missing. Jonathan never paid our parents a cent. He and Nancy rented a small apartment, and whenever they hit a financial snag, Mom and Dad stepped in. Car repairs, medical bills, groceries. When money ran tight before payday, they never asked Jonathan to contribute. Never expected him to help. He was starting a family, he had responsibilities, he needed support.
Me?
I was single. I had a good job. I could afford to help. That was their logic, and I never questioned it. I wanted to be the good son, the reliable one. The one who showed up when called and never complained. That's what family does, I told myself. One afternoon, I was on the couch scrolling through my phone after work when Mom walked in, carrying a small bundle of fabric. Tiny curtains, white with pale yellow ducks stitched along the edges. Look what I found at the store today, she said, her voice bright with excitement. I glanced up. She walked straight to my bedroom door, which was open, and held the curtains against the window frame. The same window I looked out of every morning. The same window where I used to sit as a teenager, dreaming about finally leaving home. These are perfect for the nursery, she said, smoothing the fabric against the glass. My stomach dropped. What nursery? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She turned, smiling like I'd asked the most obvious question in the world. Your room, sweetheart. We're giving it to Jonathan and Nancy. They need a space for the baby when they visit. And this room gets the best light in the morning. It will be perfect. I sat frozen. My mind tried to process what she'd just said. My room. The room I paid $2,000 a month to live in. The room that held everything I owned. Where am I supposed to sleep? Mom tilted her head, still holding the curtains. Well, you're 26 now, Anthony. You have a good job. Maybe it's time you got your own place. The words landed softly, casually, like she was suggesting I try a new restaurant. Dad walked in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He must have heard the conversation because he just nodded in agreement. Your mom is right. This room is for the baby now. You'll figure something out. I looked between them, waiting for the joke. Waiting for someone to laugh and say they were kidding. Nobody laughed. I've been paying you $2,000 a month for 3 years. Dad shrugged. And we appreciate that, but Jonathan needs this space more than you do. Get your own roof, son. You're old enough. Mom turned back to the window, holding the curtains higher, already imagining them hung. The conversation was over. The decision was made. I was expected to leave, and they had already moved on to planning the nursery in the room I still lived in. I stood up slowly. My legs felt unsteady. I walked past them, into my bedroom, and closed the door behind me. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, the same wall I'd stared at for years. I thought about every transfer I'd made, every time I helped without being asked, every dinner where I sat invisible while they celebrated Jonathan. I thought they valued me. I thought the money meant something. I thought I mattered. I was wrong. That evening, I didn't go downstairs for dinner. I stayed in my room, sitting on my bed with my laptop open. I pulled up my bank statements. 3 years of transfers. $2,000 on the first of every month, without fail. $72,000 total. I scrolled through every payment. I had never missed one. Never been late. Never asked for anything in return except a place to sleep and the assumption that I was part of this family. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Dinner is ready. Are you coming down? I didn't respond. I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. I could hear them downstairs, plates clinking, voices laughing. Jonathan must have arrived with Nancy, because I heard her high-pitched giggle, the one she always made when Dad told a joke. I lay there in the dark. I thought about packing. I thought about leaving. But something stopped me. A small, stubborn part of me wanted them to acknowledge what they were doing. I wanted someone to notice that kicking me out after 3 years of payments was just plain wrong. Nobody came upstairs to check on me. The next morning, I woke to the sound of furniture scraping across the floor. I opened my bedroom door and found Mom and Nancy standing in the hallway, holding a changing table. Dad carried a rocking chair behind them. Oh, good, you're up, Mom said cheerfully. We're starting to set up the nursery today. Can you move your things into the garage for now? Just temporarily, until you find your own place. I stood in the doorway, hair messy from sleep. I hadn't even brushed my teeth yet. You're serious? Nancy smiled apologetically. We really appreciate this, Anthony. The baby will love this room. I looked at her. She was glowing with excitement. She had no idea what this room meant to me. No idea that I had been funding half the household expenses while living here. She only saw a free nursery. When do you expect me to leave? I asked, my voice flat. Mom set the changing table down. Well, the baby is due in 6 weeks, so maybe by the end of a month? That gives you 2 weeks. Plenty of time. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to find an apartment. To pack everything I owned. To simply disappear from the home I had been financially supporting for years. Dad walked past me, into my room, and set the rocking chair near the window. He looked around, assessing the space like I wasn't even standing there. This will work great. Good light. Close to the bathroom. Yeah, this is the right call. I felt something crack inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, cold snap that settled in my chest. What about the rewiring? Dad paused. He looked at me, confused. What about it? The electrician is scheduled to start next week. The contract says I'm covering the cost in exchange for 3 months of reduced payments. That was the deal we made. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Oh, we'll figure that out. Don't worry about it. The contract is already signed. I'm listed as the financial guarantor. If I leave, who pays the $9,300? Dad frowned, irritation creeping into his voice. Anthony, stop being dramatic. We'll handle it. You don't need to make this difficult. I stared at him. The man who told me to get my own roof. The man who was erasing me from this house like I had never contributed a single dollar. I'm not being dramatic. I'm asking a question. Who pays for the rewiring if I leave? Nancy shifted uncomfortably. Mom sighed, clearly annoyed that I was still talking. Your father, and I will take care of it. Now, can you please start packing? We have a lot to do today. I nodded slowly. I turned and walked back into my room. I closed the door. I stood there for a moment, my hand still on the doorknob. They wanted me gone. Fine. I would leave. But I would not leave quietly. I would not disappear and let them pretend I never mattered. I would not let them erase 3 years of payments and call it helping out. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened my contacts. I scrolled to the electrician's number, the one I had been coordinating with for the past month. The one who was scheduled to start the rewiring on Monday. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then I pressed it. The electrician answered on the second ring. His name was Patrick. He'd been in business for 30 years, and he didn't waste time with small talk. Anthony, good to hear from you. I'm all set for Monday. Got the materials ordered. Crew is lined up. This is going to be a solid upgrade for your folks. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a coffee shop 3 blocks from the house. I'd left after the conversation in the hallway. I couldn't stand being in that room while they measured it for baby furniture. Patrick, I need to talk to you about the payment arrangement. There was a pause. Everything okay? I'm moving out. Effective immediately. The contract lists me as the financial guarantor, but I won't be living at the property anymore. I need to remove myself from the payment obligation. Patrick went quiet. I could hear him flipping through papers on his end. Anthony, the contract is binding. Work starts Monday. Materials are already purchased and non-refundable. If you pull out now, someone still has to pay the full amount. That was the agreement. I understand. My parents are the property owners. The billing should go to them directly. You sure about this? This is a big job. $9,300 isn't pocket change. I'm sure. Patrick sighed. All right. I'll update the paperwork and send the revised invoice to your parents. But Anthony, just so you know, the contract has a clause. If payment isn't received within 15 days of project start, we file a lien on the property. That's standard for jobs this size. I felt something settle in my chest. Calm. Cold. Final. I understand. Thank you, Patrick. I hung up. I sat in my car, staring at the dashboard. I thought about the past 3 years. Every month I sent $2,000. I never asked for a receipt. I never asked for a contract. I trusted them to treat me like family. I trusted them to value what I contributed. They wanted me gone. They wanted my room for Jonathan. They wanted to erase me like I was a tenant they could evict without notice. Fine, they could have the room. They could have the nursery. They could have everything except my money. I drove to a storage facility on the edge of town. I rented a 10 by 10 climate-controlled unit. Paid for 3 months up front. Then I went back to the house. Nobody was home. They must have gone out to celebrate. Probably buying more baby things. More furniture for the nursery. More items funded by the assumption that I would keep paying even after they kicked me out. I packed everything I owned. Clothes, books, laptop, the few personal items I had collected over the years. It took 3 trips to load my car. I left the furniture, the bed, the dresser, the desk. None of it was mine. I'd bought none of it. I only paid to exist in the space it occupied. By the time I finished, the room was empty except for the bed frame and the bare dresser. I stood in the doorway one last time. I looked at the window where Mom had held those tiny curtains. I looked at the walls that had surrounded me for 26 years. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing. I pulled out my phone and transferred my belongings to the storage unit. Then I checked into a budget motel on the highway. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet. The bed was stiff. The walls were thin. I could hear trucks passing outside. I lay on the bed, fully clothed. I stared at the ceiling. I thought about what would happen on Monday when Patrick showed up. I thought about the look on my parents' faces when they realized I wasn't paying for the rewiring. I thought about the invoice they would receive, the one with their names on it, the one they never expected. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 3 years, I slept without the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I slept like I had already won. I woke up in the motel room to sunlight slicing through the gap in the curtains. My phone showed 6 missed calls from Mom, 3 texts from Dad, 1 voicemail from Jonathan. I didn't listen to any of them. I turned my phone face down on the nightstand, and sat up. My back ached from the stiff mattress, but I didn't care. I was free. For the first time in years, I woke up without the invisible weight of being the dependable one. I thought about how I ended up in that role. It started when I was 16. Jonathan was 22, fresh out of college, struggling to find a job. Mom and Dad dipped into their savings to help him with rent, car payments, and student loans. They told me it was temporary. They told me Jonathan just needed a little help getting started. The help never stopped. When I turned 18, I got a job at a local tech shop fixing computers. I made decent money for a high school senior. Dad asked me one night if I could chip in for groceries, just $200 a month, just to help out while they helped Jonathan. I agreed. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to show I was responsible. $200 became $400 then. $600. By the time I graduated and got my engineering job, I was covering half the mortgage without anyone calling it rent. When I mentioned moving out at 23, Mom cried. She said I was abandoning them. She said families sticks together. She said Jonathan needed their support, and I was the only one who could help them help him. I stayed. I paid. I disappeared into the background. Jonathan got married. Nancy moved in with him. They had struggles. Medical bills, car trouble, emergency vet visits for their dog. Every time Mom and Dad sent money. Every time, I covered the gap they created in their own budget by helping Jonathan. Nobody thanked me. Nobody acknowledged it. I was just doing what I was supposed to do. At family dinners, Jonathan talked about his life, his job, his wife, his plans for the future. I sat across from him, silent, chewing food I helped pay for, listening to conversations I was never part of. When I tried to share something about my work, Dad would nod politely and then turn back to Jonathan. So, when are you two going to give us a grandchild? He would ask, grinning. Nancy would blush. Jonathan would laugh. Mom would clap her hands together in excitement. The table would buzz with energy. I would sit there, invisible. When Nancy got pregnant, the house shifted. Everything revolved around the baby. Mom redecorated the guest room. Dad built furniture. They talked about babysitting schedules and how often Jonathan and Nancy would visit. They talked about turning my room into a space for overnight stays. I thought it was just talk. I thought they were excited but not serious. I thought surely they wouldn't actually kick me out of the room I paid to live in. I was wrong. They saw me as a tenant, a temporary presence. Someone who could be moved aside when someone more important needed the space. I was never their son in the way Jonathan was. I was the backup plan, the safety net, the ATM they could access without asking. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at my phone. The missed calls kept coming. They wanted something. They needed something. They always needed something. I stood up. I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, older than 26. But there was something else, something new. I looked free. I smiled. Monday was 2 days away. Patrick would show up with his crew. My parents would realize I was gone. They would realize the rewiring bill was theirs to pay, and there was nothing they could do about it. Sunday arrived. I spent the morning at a diner near the motel, eating pancakes, scrolling through apartment listings on my phone. I found a small one-bedroom unit across town. Clean, affordable, available immediately. I scheduled a viewing for Monday afternoon. My phone buzzed. Another call from Mom. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, a text appeared. Anthony, we need to talk. Please call me back. I deleted the message without reading it twice. I finished my coffee and paid the bill. Then I drove to my bank. The lobby was quiet. I walked to the counter and asked to speak with someone about closing joint accounts. The teller directed me to a customer service desk. A woman in her 40s greeted me with a professional smile. How can I help you today? I need to remove myself from a joint checking account. My parents are the primary holders. I was added years ago as a secondary. She pulled up my information. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. I see the account here. You have signing authority, but your parents opened it. To remove yourself, we'll need their consent, or you can withdraw your funds and close your side of the access. I want to withdraw my portion and remove my name entirely. She nodded. That's straightforward. Let me process that for you. 10 minutes later, I walked out of the bank. The joint account was gone. The emergency fund they always dipped into when Jonathan needed help no longer had my name attached. If they wanted access to my money, they would have to ask. And I would say no. Next, I drove to a small legal office downtown. I'd done some research online. I needed to understand my position with the rewiring contract. I needed to know if pulling my guarantee would hold up legally. The lawyer, a man named Jeremy, listened while I explained the situation. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. You were listed as the financial guarantor, but you are not the property owner. Correct. Correct. And you moved out before the work began. Correct. He nodded slowly. Then you have no legal obligation to pay. The contractor can pursue the property owners directly. If they don't pay, the contractor can file a mechanic's lien against the property. That's standard in construction contracts. What happens if they try to force me to pay? Jeremy shrugged. They can try, but you're not living there. You're not benefiting from the work. You have no ownership stake. Any judge would side with you. The homeowners are responsible. I felt the last weight lift. Thank you. He smiled. Good luck, Anthony. Sounds like you're making the right call. I left his office and sat in my car. I pulled out my phone. I opened the text thread with my parents. I hadn't responded to any of their messages, but I could see them piling up. 12 unread texts. For voicemails. I typed a message. Short, simple, final. I moved out. The rewiring contract is your responsibility now. Good luck with the nursery. I hit send. Then I turned my phone off completely. I didn't want to see their responses. I didn't want to hear their panic. I didn't want to engage. I wanted them to sit with the consequences. I wanted them to realize what they lost when they chose Jonathan over me. I wanted them to understand that kicking me out meant losing my financial support entirely. Monday would be the reckoning. Patrick would arrive. The crew would start work. And my parents would be handed an invoice they never saw coming. I started the car and drove back to the motel. I felt calm, detached, cold. I was no longer the invisible son. I was no longer the dependable one. I was the one in control. And they were about to find out what that meant. I spent Sunday evening moving into the new apartment. The landlord handed me the keys after a quick walkthrough. The place was small but clean. Hardwood floors, a kitchen with enough counter space for one person, a bedroom with a window that faced east. Morning light would pour in, soft and warm. I unloaded my car, boxes of clothes, my laptop, a few books. I had been living in that childhood bedroom for 26 years, and everything I truly owned fit into the trunk of a sedan. That told me everything I needed to know about how little I mattered in that house. I set up my laptop on the kitchen counter. I logged into my email and searched for messages from Patrick. I found the original contract. I read through it again, line by line, making sure I understood every clause. The agreement was clear. Patrick's company would rewire the entire house, updating old aluminum wiring to copper, bringing the electrical system up to code, replacing outlets, breaker panels, and installing new dedicated circuits for major appliances. Total cost was $9,300. The timeline was 2 weeks. Payment was due within 15 days of project start. I was listed as the financial guarantor. My parents were listed as the property owners. The contract stated that if payment was not received on time, the contractor reserved the right to file a mechanic's lien against the property. I had signed this contract a month ago after negotiating with my parents. They wanted the rewiring done. The house was old. The wiring was a fire hazard. Insurance companies were starting to flag homes with outdated electrical systems. Getting it upgraded would lower their premiums and increase the property value. But they didn't have $9,300 sitting around. They had spent their savings helping Jonathan, so I offered a deal. I would cover the cost. In exchange, my rent would drop to $500 a month for the next 6 months. After that, we would reassess. They agreed. We shook hands. Dad even clapped me on the shoulder and said I was a good son. 2 weeks later, they told me to pack my things and get my own roof. I printed the contract. I highlighted the sections that mattered: the payment terms, the lien clause, the guarantor responsibilities. Then I printed my bank records showing 3 years of $2,000 monthly transfers. I printed text messages where I confirmed payment dates. I printed everything that proved I had been funding their household while they treated me like a tenant they could evict on a whim. I didn't know if I would need these documents, but I wanted them ready just in case they tried to twist the story, just in case they tried to make me the villain. I made copies. I stored one set in a fireproof lockbox. I kept another set in a folder on my desk. I uploaded digital copies to a cloud drive. Then I sat back and waited. Monday morning arrived, cold and clear. I woke up in my new apartment to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen counter and turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls. 23 text messages. 6 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. I opened my messages and skimmed the previews. Mom. Anthony, please call me. We need to talk about the electrician. Dad. What did you do? Patrick is here asking for payment. Jonathan. Dude, what is going on? Mom is freaking out. Nancy. Anthony, please talk to your parents. They are really upset. I deleted them all without reading the full messages. Then I opened my email. There was one new message from Patrick. Sent at 8:47 a.m. Subject. Payment confirmation needed. Body. Anthony, I arrived at the property this morning to begin work. Your parents informed me they were not aware of the full payment terms. They are asking me to halt the project until this is resolved. I explained that materials are already purchased and labor is scheduled. Per our contract, payment is due within 15 days regardless of project completion. Please confirm your status as guarantor or direct me to the responsible party. Thank you, Patrick. I stared at the email. I imagined the scene. Patrick pulling up in his work truck. His crew unloading tools and materials. My parents standing in the driveway, confused, asking what was happening. Patrick showing them the contract. Their faces going pale when they saw the total cost. I typed a reply. Patrick, as I informed you on Friday, I am no longer living at the property and have removed myself as financial guarantor. The property owners listed on the contract are responsible for payment. Please direct all billing inquiries to them. Thank you, Anthony. I hit send. Then I leaned back in my chair. I sipped my coffee. I waited. 10 minutes later, my phone exploded. Mom called first. I let it ring. Then Dad. Then Jonathan. Then a number I didn't recognize. Probably Patrick trying to get clarification. I ignored all of them. Finally, a text came through from Dad. Different from the others. No pleading, no confusion, just anger. Get over here now. I finished my coffee. I got dressed. I drove to the house slowly, taking my time. I wasn't in a rush. They were the ones panicking. They were the ones scrambling to understand how they ended up holding a $9,300 invoice they never planned to pay. When I pulled into the driveway, Patrick's truck was still parked on the street. Materials were stacked on the lawn, spools of copper wire, breaker boxes still in packaging. His crew stood near the garage, waiting for direction. Mom and Dad stood on the front porch. Dad's arms were crossed. Mom looked like she had been crying. Jonathan's car was parked behind Patrick's truck. He must have rushed over when he heard the news. I stepped out of my car. I closed the door calmly. I walked toward the porch. Patrick met me halfway. Anthony, glad you're here. Can we clear this up? Your parents are saying they didn't agree to the payment terms. I looked at him. Patrick, I sent you an email this morning. I am no longer the guarantor. The property owners are responsible. That's what the contract says. Patrick sighed. I know, but they're refusing to pay. They said you agreed to cover it. I did when I was living here. I moved out Friday night. The contract is between you and the property owners now. Dad stepped forward, his face red. You can't just walk away from this, Anthony. You signed that contract. I turned to him, calm and cold. I signed as a guarantor while I was a resident. I am no longer a resident. You evicted me. Remember? You told me to get my own roof. Mom's voice cracked. We didn't evict you. We just needed the room for the baby. You gave me 2 weeks to leave. You told me the room wasn't mine anymore. That is an eviction. Jonathan stepped off the porch, his expression frustrated. Anthony, come on. This isn't fair. You know they can't afford this. I looked at him. The golden child. The one who never paid a cent. The one who always got help without question. Where were you when I paid $2,000 a month for 3 years? Where were you when I covered half the mortgage so they could help you with your rent, your car, your medical bills? Where were you, Jonathan? He went silent. Nancy stood behind him, her hand on her stomach, looking uncomfortable. I turned back to Patrick. The contract is clear. Payment is due from the property owners. If they don't pay within 15 days, you file a lien. That is standard procedure. Patrick nodded slowly. That is correct. Dad stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger. You're going to let them put a lien on our house. After everything we've done for you. I felt something snap inside me. Not rage, not sadness, just a cold, final clarity. Everything you've done for me? You let me live in a bedroom I paid $2,000 a month for. You kicked me out with 2 weeks' notice so you could give my room to Jonathan's baby. You treated me like a tenant, and now you're upset that I'm acting like one. Mom started crying. Anthony, please. We can't afford this. We'll lose the house. You should have thought about that before you told me to get my own roof. I turned to Patrick. Start the work. Bill them directly. If they don't pay, file the lien. Patrick hesitated, looking between me and my parents. You're sure about this? I'm sure. He nodded. All right. I'll send the invoice to the property owners by end of day. Payment is due within 15 days. Dad lunged forward, but Jonathan grabbed his arm. Anthony, you're making a huge mistake. I looked at my father, the man who told me I was old enough to get my own place. The man who never once thanked me for the $72,000 I paid over 3 years. No, Dad. You made the mistake. You thought you could use me and then throw me away when someone more important came along. You were wrong. I walked back to my car. I got in. I started the engine. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Mom sobbing. I heard Dad yelling. I heard Jonathan trying to calm them down. I drove away. I felt nothing but cold, quiet satisfaction. They wanted me gone. I was gone. Now they could deal with the consequences. 2 weeks passed. Patrick completed the rewiring on schedule. I know because he sent me a courtesy email thanking me for the business and confirming that the work was finished. He also confirmed that my parents had not paid the invoice. On day 16, Patrick filed a mechanic's lien against the property. It was public record. Anyone searching the address would see it. Any potential buyers would see it. Any mortgage company would see it. The lien sat on their house like a scar. A permanent reminder that they owed $9,300 to a contractor they tried to stiff. If they wanted to sell the house, they would have to pay the lien first. If they wanted to refinance, the lien would block them. If they ignored it long enough, Patrick could pursue foreclosure. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel regret. I felt free. My phone stopped ringing after the first week. The text slowed to a trickle. Jonathan sent one final message. Mom and Dad are talking to a lawyer. You better be ready. I deleted it without responding. Let them talk to a lawyer. Let them waste money they didn't have on a case they couldn't win. I had already spoken to Jeremy. He confirmed what I knew. I had no legal obligation. The lien was valid. My parents were responsible. Nancy gave birth 3 weeks later. I saw the photos on social media. A healthy baby boy. Jonathan posted a picture of the nursery. My old room. The tiny curtains hung on the window. The rocking chair in the corner. The changing table against the wall. I stared at the photo for a long time. I thought about the years I spent in that room. The invisibility. The quiet payments. The assumption that I would always be there to support them. I closed the app. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. I built a new life in my small apartment. I worked. I saved money. I started going to the gym. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected while I was busy being the dependable son. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello, Anthony. It's Patrick. I sat up. Hey, Patrick. What's going on? Just wanted to give you a heads up. Your parents settled the lien today. Paid in full. I wanted to let you know it's resolved. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Thanks for letting me know. No problem. And Anthony, I don't know what happened between you and your folks, but for what it's worth, you did the right thing. They tried to dodge responsibility, and you held them accountable. That takes guts. I smiled. Thanks, Patrick. We hung up. I sat in my living room, staring out the window at the city lights below. My parents paid the lien. They probably drained their savings. They probably borrowed money from someone. Maybe Jonathan, maybe a relative, maybe a credit card with a brutal interest rate. I didn't care how they paid it. I only cared that they finally understood. Actions have consequences. You can't use people and expect them to keep supporting you. You can't erase someone's contributions and then demand their loyalty. I learned that lesson the hard way. Now they learned it, too. A month later, I got a single text from Mom. The baby is beautiful. I wish you could meet him. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. They made their choice. I made mine. I was no longer the invisible son. I was no longer the dependable one. I was no longer the safety net they could exploit without gratitude. I was Anthony, 26 years old, living in my own apartment, paying my own bills, building my own life. And for the first time in years, I was truly, completely happy.